In 2007, Helena Carroll and her boyfriend were exploring a cave in southern Thailand with other tourists and locals when they experienced horrors out of every vacationer's nightmares. They may have ignored the warnings of locals, but the chaos that ensued after entering the cave was something none of them expected. From rising waters to bugs and bats, Helena would later say she wished she never entered that cave. What started out as beautiful quickly became something horrific. I'm Tatiana, and this is Occurrence. Helena Carroll was 21 and her boyfriend John Collin was 24. They met in primary school and were high school sweethearts that had been dating for 4 years. About a year prior, John's father had passed away and left him a decent amount of inheritance. He also took over the family business and was the company director. With this newfound chapter in their lives, they came up with two possibilities. They could settle down and buy a house together with the money they saved, or they could enjoy their early 20s before getting married and travel around the world to explore different countries and try new things. They ended up deciding to do a year-long trip where they start with Thailand before venturing to other countries. While they lived in Thailand, they worked at an animal sanctuary in Pattaya because Helena loved animals. It was only fitting that one of the ways they kept money in their pockets while enjoying their travels was to work with something they loved. One day, they were talking with a friend and coworker, and the coworker brought up this trip that they just got back from. They told Helena about how it was a cave tour in the southern province of Thailand and how they loved the adventure and how beautiful everything was. It sounded like an exciting adventure for the couple and like something new to try, so they decided, why not? Let's just go and see what happens. They decided to look into the Nam Tolu Cave's tour. They were 1 month into their 12-month vacation and staying in a cottage at Bamboo House, 40 miles away from the lake near Nam Tolu. Nam Tolu was located in Khao Sok National Park, and the national park itself is a huge tourist destination. People from all over the world go there to experience the oldest evergreen forest in the world, the tall waterfalls, and the exotic wildlife. It had a lot of exotic animals like tigers, butterflies, unique reptiles and insects, and things like that. And it also had a lot of caves. Now, if you've listened to some of the other caving episodes I've done, you know that a lot of times these caves are made of limestone. The softer makeup of limestone allows water to cut through it over time and make unique cave and tunnel systems. Some are very easy to navigate, and some can be very challenging, but it also probably means that it's prone to flooding. And that's exactly what Nam Tolu was made of. The cave itself is a popular tour destination. The entrance of the cave is about 10 feet or 3 meters wide. The tunnels inside of the cave can go as small as 1 foot wide, all the way up to 100 feet or 30 meters wide. And the main hall itself is almost 255 feet long, or about 77 to 78 meters. Inside, it has unique limestone formations and subterranean streams. Honestly, I looked it up, and it has some gorgeous structures inside, and seems like a really cool place to explore. Well, except for a few things that I'll get into later. But it's sounding like a pretty nice cave to tour to Helena and John, so they reached out to a tour group to ask about getting a tour to the cave. The person they spoke to told them it was monsoon season, and for that reason, they don't do tours of the cave during that time. The person insisted that they do not enter the cave under any circumstances because of how dangerous it can be and how the weather can change quickly. But it seems like they didn't listen to this because they still made a plan to go visit the cave. For Helena specifically, she wasn't too excited to be going because it was out of her comfort zone. She's more of a beach girl, like me, because the cave isn't empty with just pretty rocks to look at. There are all sorts of insects and spiders and creepy crawlies. There are tons of bats and snakes, whatever you can think of that is native to the area. The wildlife would take shelter from the heat and rain inside of the caves, so tourists come face to face with a lot of these types of things when touring the caves. But John was totally into it and was just kind of telling her it would be a good time and maybe worth it to just explore and try something new. So Josh and Helena are in the village to find someone to take them to Nam Tolu. They find a couple of locals willing to show them where it's at and take them there for a fee, along with some other tourists. It didn't seem like the locals were official tour guides, and more so just villagers that wanted to make some money and knew where the cave was. So while they're packing their bags, getting ready to be led to this cave by the villagers, Helena turns to John and asks if he can take her to the beach tomorrow since she's toughing it out for this adventure today. And of course he agrees, so they set off. In their tourist group, there was a Swiss family made up of a mom, a dad, and their 2 teenage daughters. There were the 2 Thai locals guiding the way. John and Helena were obviously in the group, and lastly, there was a young German child. He was alone, his mom was feeling ill and couldn't join the trip, but sent him with the group anyway since she felt he would be safe with there being so many adults to look out for him. To get to the cave, they had to travel by boat on the nearby lake to the starting point. From there, they walked for about an hour to reach the mouth of the cave. Once they make it to the entrance, they see water flowing on the ground right there at the entrance. Now, that may have alarmed the tourists a little bit, but for the locals, it probably didn't concern them as much, because depending on the time of year, there would be water at different levels throughout the cave. There were little water pockets all over during the dry season, and a pretty constant presence of water at the entrance. Because at the end of the cave, there's a waterfall where the water is deep and flowing. There are also other waterfalls located nearby too. The cave itself is pretty untouched, meaning there aren't ropes laid out to guide people along and there aren't lights installed for you to see. You have to bring your own equipment, like flashlights and whatever else you might need, in order to navigate the system. So they're walking along with their lights on, and there's a lot of insects and bats in the cave. The heated weather outside during the warmer times of year causes them to flee to the caves to stay cool. So every time their lights would hit the ceiling, they'd see a bunch of bat eyes. They look down at the puddles by their feet and see little bugs swimming through the water. They look over to the wall and see it covered with spiders crawling. For the most part, everyone's enjoying it. It was beautiful in a different way, according to Helena. Again, I personally wouldn't be there, especially given the circumstances. But for the first 20 minutes, everything was pretty calm and serene. The group is observing a group of bats and spiders. If anyone notices a change in the water level, no one says anything. Or maybe they wouldn't have known what was normal and when it would have turned concerning. I would imagine that's why it's important to have an actual national park guide who can tell when the water level should be where. But I digress. It was right around that point when they heard a loud crash and a rush of water. They look over towards the direction of the entrance and see a huge wave of water rushing towards them. Everyone starts to panic and scramble, and in less than a minute, the water went from relatively low to completely overtaking the little German boy. There wasn't enough time to even process how quickly the water was moving. John and Helena were getting pushed up, and Helena just thought, "We've had it." The couple quickly look around and see a ledge that they might be able to get onto. So they rush to get over, trying to push against the water, and when Helena tries to get up on the ledge, she slips. But John is quick and is able to push her up onto the ledge. When they both make it up there, they take a second to breathe, but the relief was short-lived. Because the water was still rising, and while they were climbing, they saw the tour guides being swept away behind the German boy. And immediately after that, the Swiss couple with their 2 kids was swept away. There was no time to react, and there was no chance for them to fight the current. And then they realized, in the chaos of everything, they lost their lights. And just like that, Helena and John were alone. They were in complete darkness, completely surrounded by rising water and sitting on a small ledge. As the time started to pass, For seconds, then minutes, then hours. They started to wonder what was next. They started talking, and I'm sure the discussion involved how much they regretted using a local tour guide and not following the advice of the professional tour organization. They were alone in there, and they had no idea if anyone even knew that people were inside. They had no clue how much time had passed. They just knew that they were absolutely miserable, being eaten alive by all the insects in the cave. Their skin was raw and itchy, and they were starting to get hungry. Then John says, "I've seen this on TV. If we stay here, we're gonna die." And so he decides that he's gonna try and ride the current to what will hopefully be the cave exit so he can get help for Helena. She protests and tells him not to do it, but he's convinced that it's the only way. So he tells her, "I love you," and to stay put before he tries to slowly enter the water that is still racing by. And immediately he's pulled under the current faster than he could probably process before being swept away like the other tourists from the group. And then Helena was alone. She was sitting there in complete darkness with no one to talk to, surrounded by bats, huge spiders, and bugs trying to get away from the water below. She was probably thinking, does anyone know I'm here? Was John able to make it? Is there any help on the way? For a little while, she would scream for help, hoping someone would hear her, but no one would. She was deep into the tunnel surrounded by rushing water, and there was likely no one even near the tunnel entrance to hear her screams. And the only thing that kept replaying on a loop in her mind was the image of John being swept under the waves. She noticed a glowworm sitting on the wall while she sat there in silence, and that glowworm would become a marker for her, because it was right at the height where she would drown if the water reached it. Her thoughts started to turn dark because she just thought about if the water reaches that glowworm, how terrible of a death that would be. Waiting to die, waiting to drown. And so it crossed her mind more than once to maybe just get it over with and jump into the water right then and there. But she resisted the urge to do that, wanting to make it out alive and hoping to see John again. She was only wearing a bikini top, vest, and shorts into the cave. When they entered it, it was relatively warm outside, and she wasn't expecting to be in this situation now. But she was starting to get cold and having a really hard time keeping warm. She was scared to fall asleep. Maybe she thought if she did, she would die, whether that be because she wouldn't see the water rising around her or due to hypothermia. But Helena knew she needed to stay awake if she wanted a chance of getting out of there alive. So she started to sing and pray, going back and forth and doing whatever she could to stay awake. She would pray that someone would come and save her. And of course, all of the singing and praying and yelling for help started to make her thirsty. So she had to drink the muddy water running through the bug-filled cave, filled with all sorts of unpleasant things. After a while, she just decided to lay there and wait to die. And while she was sitting there, defeated, she thought she heard something. But then it was silent again, so she listened a little harder, and she realized she did hear something. She could hear someone yelling, so she yelled back. She was yelling, "I'm here, help, I'm here." And the person that approached her was a barefoot local man. He was using a bamboo cane to walk through the water, and when he reached her, he helped guide her back out of the cave. Once they left the cave, they were greeted by a few other rescuers who helped Helena with the long journey back out of the forest. Helena's back was hurting at the base of her spine, and she was covered in bug bites and cuts, and there were leeches clinging to everyone's skin. She was so tired, and when she was told how long she'd been trapped in the cave, she was shocked. Helena had been in that cave for 16 hours, and she had no idea how she was able to survive. But she said if that man didn't come along, she probably wouldn't have made it. In fact, the man with the cane insisted on going deeper into the cave to look for her when the other rescuers wouldn't because they were convinced she wasn't alive. At that point, Helena believed that John had made it out and was the one who got rescuers. When she first left the cave and asked about him, they told her that he was at the pier waiting for her. They told her this to get her to work with them on the long journey back through the jungle and the boat ride to the pier, and possibly to prevent her from going into shock before they were able to get her into an ambulance for medical attention. But once they got Helena in the ambulance, she asked again where John was. They broke the news to her that she was the only survivor of the tragedy. Everyone else in the group, the parents, the children, the locals, and even John had all drowned in the cave. They had been found at the mouth of the cave a few hours after the flash flood hit them. Helena lost it after she heard that, and then had to go on to identify the bodies of everyone in the group. She ended up spending a week in the hospital being treated for Weil's disease, which can be as mild as flu-like symptoms, but if it's left untreated, can develop into kidney failure, jaundice, and inflammation of the heart, all of which result in death. It spread from animals to humans, and I'm assuming she contracted it from drinking the floodwater that was running through a cave filled with all sorts of animals, insects, and bats, and their excrements. In total, there were 8 victims to the tragedy. After Helena returned to the UK, her father picked her up from the airport. And after attending John's funeral, who, by the way, was an Aston Villa fan, so he was buried in his cherished claret and blue shirt, Helena later received counseling and returned to work the following January and met her now husband, Stuart. They have 2 children together, but Helena says she had so much guilt for a long time after her experience. She says she had to move on. If she hadn't, she may have done something harmful to herself, but doesn't think the event will ever leave her and will stay with her for the rest of her life. So what happened? Well, after the group entered the cave, it started raining. They clearly didn't know that and had no way of knowing that since they couldn't hear it that far inside. The cave being so close to waterfalls and having its own waterfall inside led to the flash flood. Now that's fair, but there were signs all around the park in English and in Thai saying to not go into the caves during heavy rains. It was the rainy season, so random showers were a given. On top of that, the governor orders the park to close during the rainy season, which is why the tour groups turned them away to begin with. Helena did an interview a few years ago where she mentioned they left their passports with a company or something. It sounds like that the locals maybe were doing a off-the-books tour for extra income, but that official tour guides that were asked about it said they absolutely do not take tourists into that area at all during the rainy season. People were genuinely confused on how they were even in the park to begin with. The investigation was sealed, so I'm unable to get much more detail than that. But today, it's very prominent online when looking up the trips out that way that the area is partially closed during the rainy season and that they don't recommend visiting during that time, and Nam Tolu is completely off limits for tourism from June 1st to November 3rd every year. They make it very clear there have been deaths during flash floods there, and to absolutely not go there without organizing a guided trip with the Khao Sok National Park headquarters. That being said, what do you think about the Nam Tolu disaster? Leave your thoughts in the reviews or comments, and don't forget to follow or subscribe. All sources can be found at occurrencepod.com, which is linked in the show notes. Stay safe, and see you next Thursday.